What if our nation was under attack and we could go to our coastlines and see the armada of ships coming after us, or see the tanks landing, or the aircraft flying overhead, dropping bombs, maybe even gas? We'd be outraged. We'd pull all our resources together and we'd fight back. And then if we defeated them, we'd go after them and we'd blow up their land and destroy their facilities. It's happened for centuries, probably as long as man has been around. But what if you don't see the war? What if you don't feel the full impact of the destruction that's taking place on your soil, to your laws, legally? And it's destroying your water, it's destroying your air, it's destroying your social infrastructure, it's taking away your rights. Well, that's what activist groups are talking about today. It's not the big war with all the military. It's the legal war negotiated by corporations in different parts of the world in secrecy, and a result of which are trade agreements like NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, which is a little over 20 years old, which promised jobs, which promised that we'd maintain all the standards of the quality of life that we had for our water and our air, and none of that has happened. Our jobs have been taken away. In fact, the jobs in Mexico that were there for Mexicans have been taken away, which put pressure on Mexicans to leave the country to come to the United States in hope of a better life. And that same mistake has been repeated time after time on various trade agreements around the world. Trade agreements that were pitched as beneficial, when in fact the only people that benefited were corporations. We have 3 such pieces of legislation coming now, and the activist groups are up in arms about them, and they want everybody to know. And so I'm going to share 3 of them with you so you can be the judge. You need to look at the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TTP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or the TTIP, or the Trade and Services Agreement, called TISA, all of which are supposed to benefit the nations involved. In the case of the TTP, there's 12 nations, including the United States, all around the Pacific Rim, portions of South America, Asia, and the United States. Not all nations are included in that. And the TTIP, we're talking a huge chunk of Europe. And in TISA, we're talking about 50 nations that are dealing with deregulation on so many fronts. Now, why have we had regulations? We've had regulations because we needed them to constrain corporations from abusing our land, our air, our soil, from passing themselves off as good guys when in fact they're ruining the country. So we passed these laws, and the activists were thrilled because we were finally able to clean up our air and our water after President Nixon passed the legislation for the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. All of that is at risk of going away with these new actions. And Congress is at the forefront of giving away our rights. There's an action that just passed the House, became law. It's called the Fast Track Authority, which allows the President of the United States to sign these agreements and then send them to Congress for an up or down vote, giving them only 60 days to review all the details. And in the case of the TPP, for example, there's 29 chapters, none of which have been released to the public, but 3 of them were that came out through WikiLeaks. And the contents of those three alone were enough to frighten people. Imagine if our nation was sued by a foreign conglomerate because we raised our national minimum wage to $15. Well, you'd be pleased or surprised to know that the nation of Egypt is being sued right now by a French multinational for raising its minimum wage. Big Pharma is going after Canada because of its restrictions on their highest priced drugs, because they think it's usury and they want a better price. In Uruguay, Paraguay, the United Kingdom, and Australia, Philip Morris is suing to get rid of regulations on plain packaging or regulations against advertising for cigarettes, even though all these regulations were passed by these various countries to improve the health and well-being of their own citizens. The TPP alone, with 29 chapters, only 3 of which we've seen and have found flaws with, we don't know what the other 26 chapters are. What these activist groups are saying is we can't come to you as American citizens and saying we need to fight this with clear definitions of what everything is because it's all hidden. But based on what we know, we need our American citizens to go to their Congress, their representatives, their senators, and say, you have to stop this now. And there are plenty of organizations fighting this battle for the average American. The American Federation of Labor, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, the AFL-CIO, the Sierra Club, the National Resources Defense Council, Doctors Without Borders, Consumers Union, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, who's trying to protect the sovereignty of our internet on a international basis, the Alliance for Justice. Many communities across Europe are fighting the TTIP successfully on a local basis through their councils. And there's over 1,000 councils in France and Germany and Spain who have passed regulations against the TTIP. In the United States, even our own press won't cover these regulations. They won't tell the American people what's going on. So these activists are asking for our help in getting the word out. As an American citizen, as a person who will be impacted by the negative aspects of all these regulations on your lives, it's incumbent on you to go online and Google, do whatever search you want on those 3 main issues, plus Fast Track, educate yourself, and decide whether it's time for you to take some action because it's in your own best interest to do so. Thank you.